Morning, morning, morning. What's going on, guys? What's going on? Hello, but I had to deal with some stuff this morning. A little crazy Hispanic family. Little family emergency stuff. It is what it is, though. I think I'm all good for the rest of the day here. That was is what pretty much matters. I dealt with all that before the market opened, so I'm glad I got that all the way. But a hell of a gap up this morning. I'm not gonna lie. Did I expect this much of a gap up? Honestly, no, I did not. I actually thought we would pretty much kind of stabilize between staying neutral and then kind of just keep us a little bit more chopping before we got that kind of implosive move. But I will take it nonetheless. I do like the morning gap up that we have. Now, if you guys heard me kind of mention it, just piggybacking off of things that I've said historically, right? A lot of what you're seeing is being brought up specifically in the tech sector as we continue this overall bear market rally that we're having. Look for those key names that have been beaten up, right? Look for the Netflix, look for the Meta, and look for your Amazon type of names. Those are the names that are actually more so have larger gap fills to the upside to be filled, as they were just literally crushed, right? Especially off of their earnings, respectively, this last quarter. So those are the names more so that you want to keep an eye on. And I say that more to agree. Obviously, Apple is pretty much one of the leaders in this entire bear market rally. It's always relatively showed that stronger relative strength, more so to say the better term, right? And despite even Tesla having its down days, Apple's been that one leader where you say, all right, even if the market's red, you typically see that relative strength from Apple. So that has been more so a focal point of our leading indicator right now for the amount of legs that we have remaining on this overall bear market rally. All right. So that to me, I use it more so as an indicator to literally tells me how much more juice we have in this little rally. But those names that are more so have the bigger gap fills to the upside, and we've already seen a lot of monstrous rallies out of them. Especially, I can point to a name like Netflix. Netflix has just been had a monster rally already so far, but I believe that Amazon and also Meta for that name, those two names specifically, have a little bit more catch up if this rally has some more legs in it. I think those two names have been beaten up that have a little bit more to the upside here, more significantly. All right. So that's pretty much just giving you things to pretty much look at from a macro perspective in terms of where rotation is, maybe the names that you want to kind of key in on. All right. Lobo, what's going on? Pan W. I actually heard about that earnings last night. All right, I'll kind of skip right back to Spy here in just a quick sec, but let's take a look at Pan W. I haven't looked at the chart. I didn't look at anything off of this yesterday. And did I just spell this wrong? So I have not even looked at this chart. Probably the first time I'm looking at this in probably a long, long time. All right, but I will say before their earnings actually occurred, I would have probably said that you had a nice little weekly head and shoulders action that's taking place here. But despite that head and shoulders weekly, it does look like the earnings pretty much is what is solidifying this to be invalidated here potentially. Now, resistance wise, I would be watching for this to break north over 174 half. Over 174 half, then we're going to be looking to take this to another height, and over 174 half, then you'll be targeting 179. All right. So two key levels for you, Lobo. 174 half needs to break. Then you can trade this up to 179. Ideally, I would potentially hope that it ends up happening for you today, being the fact that it's a 0 day Friday. Maybe, maybe not. But I do anticipate that we would likely get to that 179 at the very minimum here, at least going into next week. That was probably where I would say, in terms of being the safe bet, the safe trade. Yeah, you go out to next week expiration and you look to play that safe with more time on your hand. If you're pretty much feeling like the gambler, either you look to see how this reacts once again up to that 174 half, and then you look to pretty much play it off of the resistance, and you look for the rejection to pretty much short it back down for a pullback, or you look to pretty much trade it over 174 half up towards 179, like I mentioned, and it would be your discretion if you want to end up trading that with 0 day or if you end up getting next week expiration. All right. You have December, you have two of them per 205. Let's see how we get to that 205. So you definitely would have to take out the peak of what was a potential right shoulder here over 192.93. But then you would basically be looking to retest. I can see that you're looking to basically retest what was a little bit of a chop zone, a little bit of where you had your prior supply. So I can see that taking place if that were to play out. Now, my concern would be is that once you get up towards this 199, close enough to that 200 mark, that's when I would say I think at that point you'll be playing pretty greedy to try and get that much higher and play it exactly up towards that 205, 206 supply level. And so I would say try to cut your profits as you approach that 200 mark. That is what I would ideally say, and I'm pretty sure you're going to be pretty happy with the profits. Once it ends up getting there, at what point it gets there, that's a question mark, right? But once it starts to approach the $200 mark, I think that's when you take profits on that and you look to be pretty much move on to the next one. But I do like the fact that you got time on that, as you just mentioned. That is pretty much the biggest key. So anyone that kind of is taking away anything from this morning, take the note of what El Lobo did. He could have done that within what 2 to 3 week expiration, but he chose the smart way of taking that trade and he did it for December expiration. Obviously, I'm sure that probably cost a little bit more than what most of you want to end up spending, right? Especially given the fact that I am saying that it is a bear market rally. But given the fact that we also may end up having potential Santa Claus rally into the end of December here, that is something as well that's pretty much no in a factor. So I think the given fact that he's already gonna likely be pretty much in profit, he can pretty much decide how much longer he wants to hold, not necessarily hold until those 205s go in the money, right? But he gave himself a lot of time on that. So that's something to pretty much respect, and I think somewhat everyone should pretty much follow off of that kind of footstep, just in the mindset wise, because we get so caught up trying to play weeklies. I think that's pretty much a very good example on the mindset that you want to have, especially in trying to swing trade. All right. Cass, what's going on? What's going on? Good morning. So, like I was pretty much mentioning, let's look to see exactly how some names here are pretty much performing. You do see Netflix kind of end up giving us a little bit of a reflexive bounce off it, end up getting a nice little rejection from that 50-day EMA off of the weekly here. So it did end up progressing. Resistance that I do have sitting here is still at that 306 mark. So I would not be surprised if we got another potential $7, $8 move off of this one. That would not surprise me at all. So I would watch to see if we can retest that 306 mark as a resistance and then look to potentially see if we get the rejection or do we get the follow through to basically go ahead and get more of a continuation. If I actually pull it out to the daily here, you can see we are still within that gap fill off with Netflix here. So we do still have more upside here that can be potentially filled because that gap fill does not complete until 333. So there is further continuation for whatever given point in time that we end up breaking that 306 high that we have so far. That is going to be the question mark. And so, kind of piggybacking off of what El Lobo did, right? He bought himself time. If you do anticipate that we're going to continue to get more upside here on Netflix, or maybe you wait until you get the break over 306 to create a new high, a higher high, that'll be the factor when you maybe want to get some call action on Netflix here next for the next 2 to 3 weeks, right? That'll be something that you want to keep your attention on. Let's go ahead and cast look at Spy. I did look at Spy particularly. I have not looked at it since this morning. I kind of got a little distracted by Aloba looking at Pan W, but basically got to my support level yesterday. Just to give you a quick rundown, right? Spy ended up hitting my 390 mark that I was watching. I was saying that we could overshoot the 387 yesterday, but that was not the case. More so, we ended up tapping our support at 390. We were able to basically build our little base, we were able to get a little bit of an attempt of a recovery into the close yesterday. If you remember that little spike to the end of the day, especially those of you that decided to pick up puts yesterday, we had a nice little spike into the end of the day. You had a monstrous gap up, and we're sitting right here near my resistance. I mean, not necessarily, we're below it at that 394 mark off of this gap up. So I'm going to more so look to see, all right, if we are anticipating a morning little pullback, right? It would make sense to see if we pull back to 394. If we do pull back to 394, now how quick of a recovery, how quick of a snapback do we get towards this pre-market high? And then do we end up pushing pretty much over 399? And then we'll start to look at that 200-day moving average off of the daily here. Yet again at 401.37. And I believe if we break 401.37 today, you could literally put this at literally at 403 rather quickly because then that's going to pretty much solidify that this is going to be a solid trend day and we're going to close out the week on a pretty positive sentiment. All right. So that'll be what I'm pretty much looking at. Ideally, especially those of you that are pretty much cash, you're not in a position, or maybe you're even in puts. Ideally, I would hope for a pullback, kind of see if we wipe out these gains from pre-market. Then that way we end up trapping the shorts that try and chase us into the red territory, and we snap it right back up, and we take this back above 400. That would ideally be my scenario in which I would love to play this, right? But that's just a game plan in mind. Doesn't necessarily have to happen, and that's why we always have to respect the levels, right? So that was pretty much what I'm looking at. Ideally, I would look to get into calls if we can break over 399, and then obviously I'm gonna look for that break over that 200 EMA over 401.37, and we could take this to 403. That's pretty much it. Is my no flip side of this little game plan here. If I can't get the buy the dip type of opportunity, and we're more so chasing a trend day, then I'm gonna look for the break over 399. Pretty much get the break over the 200-day daily EMA, and then we take it to 403. That's basically giving you my flip side of both scenarios. All right. Amazon was one of the names that I was pretty much outlining as well, just to give you a quick rundown on that one. I actually have a daily descending broadening wedge just playing out on Amazon. If we get this curl up as we pretty much got a nice little gap, that's pretty much should end up being filled here. That would end up pretty much playing this out as an inverted head and shoulders. You have the left shoulder, you have a head, and potentially our right shoulder if we can curl up to that gap fill, test the downtrend resistance off of the descending broadening wedge, and overall PT that I'm looking at, and more so not necessarily within this week or next week, but I have this actually pushing up towards 116 is where I have this potentially moving towards. All right, so that's pretty much just a quick rundown on Amazon to give you guys a quick move on that. Otherwise, a little brief for me this morning. I did have to cut it short this morning, so sorry for being a little bit late this morning for you guys. But I will leave the stream up for Spy as well here for the next few minutes. I also do have it up for standard members as well. And you guys have a great trading day, all right? Later, guys.